Hey, this is just Conebone before the video. Just gonna briefly describe what this video is about. In this video, the video I'm responding to specifically, they are talking about how colonialist powers came primarily from the United States when it came to Nazi Germany. Now, the extent that they go to is grotesque, and that's why I responded to it. One of the multiple reasons being the manifest destiny that the United States had, which I don't think was one of the main reasons why Germany wanted to expand it in Europe, which they completely abuse in this entire video. They rely purely on the connection between manifest destiny and Lebensraum, and while reacting to this, I thought it would make for a good video. So, there might be a lot of information that I am wrong on, and you are completely free to criticize me on anything that I got factually incorrect, as none of what I'm saying comes from immediately reading a source, but more from learned history that I have had throughout my high school and college years. So, do criticize me if you want. That's completely up to you, but I'll proceed with the video. Please enjoy. Okay, there you go. Alright, the USA actually did give some inspiration for the Nazis. However, there was a big anti-Semitic sentiment all around Western countries, just because, Christianity was like one of the biggest fucking religions. It was the religion of the area, and, Christians blamed the Jews for killing them, and then as the Jewish people got rich through working and financing and banking, they decided to think that all the degeneracy around the world was fermented by the Jewish people, and that they were using their money to change the system or whatever. And you would assume that if they were going to blame Jewish people for having all the financing, they would go for taxing them more. But no. They'd rather support laissez-faire capitalism, but the Jews. So,
here's a fact for you. There is a direct ideological line between US settler colonialism and the Nazis. The USA, post-independence, was the world's first state explicitly founded on racial ideology, explicitly founded on the idea of a superior colonialism and the Nazis. The USA, post-independence, was...
Well, what's the comparison? Settler colonialism and Nazism? I mean, I guess the comparison is genocide, because they did that, but...
The world's first state explicitly founded on racial ideology, explicitly founded on the idea of a superior white race that needed to keep its bloodline pure.
That's also true. There was a racial element to settling in areas and kicking out natives. It was because they saw themselves as superior, because they saw all of them as tribalistic and cannibalistic.
And they needed to take land from and exclude other races. It was the first. The French didn't do that. The Spanish didn't do that. The Dutch didn't do that. The British didn't even do that. The Americans did it. Only after independence did they start doing it. And what I mean...
Wait, are you saying that,
white race that needed to keep its bloodline pure, and they needed to take land from and exclude other races. It was the first. The French didn't do that. The Spanish didn't do that. The Dutch didn't do that. The British didn't even do that. The Americans did it. Only after...
What, white colonialism? Am I not understanding what he's saying? He's saying white colonialism only happened with America and then went to Europe? Europe did it too. Where do you think we got the slaves?
Include other races. It was the first. The French didn't do that. The Spanish didn't do that. The Dutch didn't do that. The British didn't even do that. The Americans did it. Only after independence.
Okay, I need to recoup.
The USA, post-independence, was the world's first state explicitly founded on racial ideology. Explicitly founded on the idea of,
Who would have fucking known that European civilizations weren't founded on some racial ideology?
A superior white race.
And they were battling each other too. If you want to talk about racism, which would be not true, but it would have to deal with bigotry towards ethnic groups because all these people in Europe were fighting amongst each other to claim that they were the superior Europeans. Like, they constantly fought with each other all the time, and that's probably why, like, they weren't mainly as focused with imperialism, is because they were still fighting their borders.
That needed to keep its bloodline pure, and they needed to take land from and exclude other races. It was.
Do you know what a royal family does?
The French didn't do that. The Spanish didn't do that. The Dutch didn't do that. The British didn't even do that. The Americans did it.
No, okay. You could say that, but at the same time, America got the slaves from Europe. Of course, technically Africa, but Europe was being colonized by Africa. Or no, Africa was being colonized by Europe. My bad. But even though, like, there were kings in Africa that were giving their people as slaves, that didn't stop European settlers from, like, completely invading the area and then circulating the triangle trade. There's a reason why it's a triangle and not just a back and forth.
Only after independence did they start doing it. And what I mean is not those places didn't do colonialism, didn't do settler colonialism as well, because they absolutely did.
Okay,
but it was in the independent USA that explicitly excluded Native Americans and even freed slaves from citizenship. That, you know, had, even after they...
Hold on, what?
USA that explicitly excluded Native Americans and even freed slaves from citizenship. That, you know, had, even after some of them were allowed citizenship, and black people were, but not American Indians up until like 1924 or something. You know, there were still anti-miscegenation laws and stuff. So what
are you getting at? Because if you're gonna pretend like Europe wasn't as racist as Americans were at the time, they went a step above and beyond. We took people from there, but they took the entire fucking area in Africa. They cut it up into different sections. I get what he's saying. He's saying that the US after independence still had bigotry. And I would say that's true because we had a big slave state at the time. However, colonies south of the United States used slave labor excessively. It led to the Haitian Revolution down there, right?
What happened is, and I'm going to make a longer video about this soon, one of the biggest reasons for the Declaration of Independence was that the British king had prohibited American settlers from manifesting their destiny further to the west because he didn't want to fund the defense of frontier settlers anymore. So
this is true, but this isn't like one of the biggest reasons, though.
One of the biggest reasons for the supposed freedom war from the British, you know, the oppressive British tyrants, was that the oppressive British tyrants didn't want them to steal any more Indian lands. From Jefferson to Jackson.
Pardon? I don't know about that one, Chief. There's a wide variety of reasons. I mean, it was just like, what he's saying is true, but he's saying it as if it's like a main reason for it. It's not. Like, one of the main reasons was just because of the British occupation in the area was excessive, even though the whole point of America was to get away from Britain, as well as the things he's saying here. Like, they definitely, or I think there was some type of thing said in the community that the British might have abolished slavery. The Manifest Destiny was also probably one of them because, you know, they wanted to go and make another country, but now they're restricted by the British to not go out and do that country. And I will say the Manifest Destiny was fucked, but I don't know if it's like the main reason why the U.S. left. It sounds like a British who's kind of a sore loser about the war.
And including
it ended a while ago.
We have this clear ideology of the idea that, like, white, specifically Anglo settlers, needed to head west and take land from Native Americans through whatever means necessary, whether they needed to be massacred, whether they needed to be deported, whether they needed to be killed more indirectly, like through.
Even though the U.S. did this, I'm pretty sure most of the that's actually tough to say. Even though I will say a lot of the land we got were from purchases from other countries, you know, other European countries that were colonizing areas. Yeah, the Manifest Destiny was fucked, but that wasn't like a core American principle. That was kind of something that expanded as time went on as they were independent.
Destroying their food sources and their way of life, etc., to take the land from them. The US is an explicitly Nazi-like project from its very founding as an independent nation. It's significantly worse than most other colonial projects, and that's saying.
Sorry? I will say we did a lot of fucked shit, and I agree on some of the worst parts, but we're the worst ones? You think we're the worst colonization project? You know what fucking Christopher Columbus did when he reached India? He fucking butchered them. It was a genocide. Do you know what Hernan Cortez did to the Aztecs? And who's the other guy who went to the Incans? Fuck, I forgot his name. Francisco Pizarro, that's what his name was. It wasn't just America who did this white man's guilt type shit. Do you not remember when, like, Britain literally took all of India? When they took Hong Kong? When Britain literally had a chunk of Africa as a continent? This wasn't just an American project. We weren't just built bigoted people. We were doing literally what our neighbors were doing with the people there.
A lot. And it wasn't just against Native Americans too. It was also explicitly against imperialists, against other colonial powers and other states that had become independent from other colonial powers. Do you know how the US bought Louisiana? By threatening violence, forcing the French into the deal. Do you know how the US...
That's not true, actually. That's incredibly false. The reason why we got Louisiana was because Napoleon had taken power and he needed money for his war effort. So he sold Louisiana. And that's when we sent Lewis and Clark over to explore the lands and whatever. And then we fucked up all the native populations there. But yeah, no, this isn't true. Like, we weren't threatening the French to do anything. What were we threatening them with? They were literally, like, best friends with us at the time. Like, they literally gave us the Statue of Liberty because they liked our idea of democracy. And they actually used it to change their country entirely. The French Revolution happened at that time. It was really important. Like, no, this isn't true. For anyone watching this, do check out Oversimplified's video on Napoleon, because it literally explains why he did most of the shit he did.
US got Florida, same thing. Like, there was a bunch of
Didn't they get that from the Spanish?
in Oregon as well. It's by threatening the British with war if they didn't, like, hand
Wait,
it over.
what
Florida, same thing. Like, there was a bunch of in Oregon as well. It's by threatening the British with war if they didn't, like, hand it over, basically. And then there was...
Yeah, wait. Is he saying that's, like, racism? This is just, like... I don't know about this, Chief. Like, you can say what America did with the Spanish was fucked. I feel like what you could say is that what America did to, like, take Texas... Or, America didn't take Texas. Texas made itself and then joined the U.S. But... And then just, like... making a war out of nothing just to steal land from them, you could say that's fucked. However, I'm pretty sure we acquired Florida through just a deal.
The war with Mexico, where they took California, a bunch of other southern states.
Yes, this part was fucked. But I don't know about the Britain part.
As well, including Texas, though that was a bit more complicated, because basically they had always planned to take these places for themselves. So the US is explicitly just a massive imperialist project, and it was from the very beginning. It was an aggressive imperialist project, not just against native peoples, but even against other settler colonists, even against other colonial
What he's explaining was done by literally every European power.
powers. You know, the reason
Why do you think people went into World War I so easily?
why didn't the US end up doing a mass genocide like the Nazis did? Well, for one, they didn't quite have the means to, and they weren't quite yet at the point of having to eliminate the Indians. It was more like the Indians, you know, they're in our way and need to go. But I mean, if they were in your way and they didn't go, then that was taken as, like, free reign to kill them, their women and their...
The same as, like, I don't know if that's exactly identical. I feel like there's a difference, but what we did with the Native Americans was incredibly fucked. I feel like it's a false comparison because the Nazis didn't give the Jews the choice to just leave. They just collected them all and killed them because they saw them as destroying their culture. America moved Native Americans because they wanted more land. That was it. And that's fucked. Don't get me wrong. What America did to expand on that and then never give anything to Native Americans is probably the most fucked thing the US did, aside from slavery, which was fucking awful. I think those might be equal, but Nazi Germany was literally exterminating people because they weren't the pure race that they should have been, and everyone else was destroying society. Even though they see black people in America back then as destroying their country, I don't think they did an ethnic cleansing of black people. They did do an ethnic cleansing of Native Americans, though.
Manifest Destiny wasn't quite as violent as the Nazi expansion to the east, is because a lot of native people happened to be killed by disease right around the time when the settlers were expanding. They would have tried to kill them in warfare if the disease hadn't done it. It's not like it just they had.
The Trail of Tears was definitely what he's talking about. No, they did actually just like flat out kill Native Americans. They absolutely did that. The Trail of Tears literally was that. And you want to know what's good? What's cool and funny for America? The person on the $20 bill literally allowed the Trail of Tears to happen. He was the dude who passed it. So,
they happened to die, and then they trotted along like, oh no, everyone here just happened to die from disease. They want
not just disease, they flat out killed them too.
Wanted to expand. Anyway, it was just like a happy accident for the American settlers that it happened. Do you know who both the thought leaders and the implementers of German colonialism in Africa took as their reference? The US experience. They
With
saw
what?
Africa as sort of like
For their expansion in Africa? What do you mean?
a Wild West. And by the way, the terms Wild West and Western are explicitly colonialist. They're taken from the idea that, us superior Anglo-Saxon white people have to go west and take this territory from these wild savage Indians. That's what Western and Wild West means. The Nazis use the term Wild East, by the way, in the exact same way. So first, German colonial.
Is that true? They use the term Wild East? Wild East is a brewing company, so there's that. Okay, I don't know if the term Wild West directly implied that they were taking land from Native Americans. I'm pretty sure Wild West was just talking about expanded land that people need to go travel to because they just acquired it. May I remind you, most of these deals that we got land from were done in exchange of money. Like Alaska, we literally just bought from Russia because they felt like it was a pointless piece of land. The Louisiana Purchase was a deal Napoleon did with our current president at the time because he needed more money to continue his war effort in invading Europe, which is, by the way, pretty colonialist to invade those countries like that. I think the French might be even more fucked because they're directly targeting European countries instead of just their colonies. But anyway, I don't think the term Wild West was directly racist. I feel like this is hyperbolic.
Colonial leaders explicitly were inspired by Manifest Destiny, but Manifest Destiny, by the way, it's a term that was coined later to explain something that really originates with the Declaration of Independence. So if you're like, but Manifest Destiny
is not directly racist, but it has racist components in it. It mainly talks about expansion, not as much about how... Actually, no, it actually has to do a lot with how the white colonizers need to solidify their superiority.
came much later. It doesn't fucking matter. Jefferson, Jackson, basically every politician between those two, and for quite a few presidents after Jackson as well, believed in this. It's in the Declaration of Independence.
Believed
it's right
in what?
there. The complaint that King George was preventing the colonists from expanding into their rightful manifest destiny in Indian lands, okay?
Yeah, well, guess what? You think the British were so opposed of doing that? They literally did that. What are you talking about? What do you think Canada was about? They had to push out a native population in order to get that, as well as every other European country at that time. The Spanish and the Portuguese caused so much fucking pain in the area of South America and Central America, but you're not pointing at them. You're just pointing at America because they're currently racist.
So you go from that, and then you get like...
I think personally, if you want to talk about harm done to Native Americans, you shouldn't be pointing towards the United States. You should really point out the Spanish and the Portuguese. None of this wouldn't have been done if it weren't for the Portuguese and the Spanish. And they definitely got the most influence from that. They literally took a continent and split it in half between each other.
From expanding into their rightful manifest destiny in Indian lands. Okay, so you get from that, and then you get like German colonialists who explicitly referenced, you know, not Spanish colonialism, not French colonialism, not Dutch colonialism, explicitly the independent U.S., not even British colonialism, just the independent U.S. state.
Okay. I think it was America that coined the term manifest destiny. I think he's LARPing on this really hard, but that doesn't sit well, Chief.
As their reference, what they needed to do, they needed to get more living space for Germans, and they described the indigenous people there as redskins, explicitly. Then,
Yeah.
this sort of idea was
Spanish called the people in the area cannibals.
picked up on in the very early 1900s and the late 1890s, 1900s by German intellectuals who, in correspondence with American intellectuals and historians, got the idea from them of Lebensraum, which was a word coined in 1901. Basically, the idea that Germans had like this divine right to more living space in the East, and that the indigenous people, you know, in Poland, basically all of Eastern Europe, needed to be either deported, eradicated, or enslaved so that Germans could get their rightful living space. Do you know where they got that? From Manifest Destiny, literally from Manifest Destiny.
I can see the comparison, but I don't think those are identical. A lot of it had nothing to do with like just copying, pasting Manifest Destiny, but it came a lot from an inner bigotry and hatred towards other European countries for the failures of the First World War. May I remind you, the First World War was a colonial battle for territories. Of course, it started with the assassination of, Franz Ferdinand? Literally, they so quickly jumped the gate and had a war with each other because they wanted those little itsy bitsy pieces of land that they constantly had. There was such a big buildup with the countries and the territories in the area at that moment where, like, you know, Russia was making deals with Serbia, and then Austria-Hungary was making deals with Germany. French became allies with Belgium. The UK became friends with French, surprisingly. Like, First World War was purely about imperialism and taking land from other European countries that had done imperialism on other areas and taking those stolen lands already. Like, they wanted those African colonies, and that's why the US didn't join until much later, because they already had their piece of the cake. They don't need African colonies. They already have the entire American continent, so South and North America, because they were much more wealthy.
They constantly reference in these writings the US example and refer to.
But yeah, no, I will agree that expanded living space could be something that's taken from Manifest Destiny, but they were more focused on taking back land that they lost in World War One.
The Slavs as redskins. They talk about it in terms of, you know, the US West is our East, stuff like that. And then Hitler read these works. You know, he talked to the Lebensraum theorist, and that's where he got his idea. Himmler as well was also big on it. That's where they got their idea to colonize the East. In World War II, the reason that the Nazis invaded France and tried to invade the UK, you know, they invaded France, they tried to invade the UK, they invaded Scandinavia, Holland, Belgium, etc. The reason they did that is because they believed that they needed to do so to prevent those countries from stopping their colonization of the East. It wasn't, you know, ideally they wouldn't have liked to do it, because they want.
No, the reason why they went into war was because they were constantly taking countries. Nazi Germany was pushing their limits by taking countries like Austria-Hungary, trying to invade Poland, making a deal with Russia so they wouldn't have to do a two-front battle. I will agree they were expansionist in that they were just trying to invade everything. It was a hyper-irrational, and I can see some similarities with Manifest Destiny. But, like, when Hitler invaded Russia, that's like if we try to invade Canada because we felt like we deserved it all. I don't know if that's really comparable. Hitler was trying to get everything he possibly could, even if there was people living in it. We bought land from other countries. Either that, or we went to war with, like, individual colonies. We didn't literally fight everyone at once.
Wanted to expand into the East to massacre all the people who live there, or enslave them or whatever, or deport them, and take the living space for themselves. So the Western Front was basically a means to an end for them. Nazi ideology was based on the concept of Lebensraum, which was based on the concept of manifest destiny. That's a fact. They took the US specifically as their guiding ideological example.
Yeah, but you're missing historical context up to that. You're missing other pieces that might be specifically European, but you're just saying this is somewhat compatible with manifest destiny.
Sure, there's slight differences, mostly because of practical concerns. You know, I'm sure Hitler would have loved it if you know, when they got to Poland, everyone there was just having to die from disease, or you know, they somehow could have taken it without needing to kill the people there because they left after a, you know.
I'm sorry, did Germany like let Polanders just move into other countries, or did they just take them over entirely?
After explicit threats of violence. And then there's a
Did Germany buy Poland?
clear ideological chain leading to the Nazis, leading to Hitler, leading to Himmler, leading to World War II. I mean, it was the very idea of the, you know, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The idea behind that is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for white Anglo-Saxon farmers on Western land stolen from Native Americans. Bruh. That was what that meant, explicitly. Jefferson, for example, was obsessed with the idea of the white yeoman, independent yeoman farmer who would be given an ample estate as a reward for him helping to colonize the frontier, and black slaves to help him work the land. That was what he was talking about. Basically, the
Hold on, my dogs are barking.
idea of the USA is we want to steal, we want to, like, you know, conquer and either murder or get rid of these Indians somehow. You know, we don't want to mix with them at all. We want to live separately from them. They need to get out of here or they will be killed. White, you know, pure white Anglo-Saxon individuals can take that land from them and use black slave labor to pursue liberty and happiness, but only for those white human farmers. I'm going to make a much more detailed video on this with lots of specific examples. Like the ideological chain is undeniable. Not just that, but the explicit similarities between Nazism and Jeffersonian sort of Jacksonian expansionism in the US is undeniable. Like, if the US had the capacity to do what Germany did in Eastern Europe, they would have done it. And in a way, like, Nazi racial ideology was taken directly from US.
If we would have done that exact thing, we would have fought Canada. Like, what? Like, I know we fought the Spanish and the Mexicans, and I think we fought Cuba too. And we did take some lands from that. But in that area, the Spanish owned pretty much everything south of America. If we really had the gung-ho ability of invading every country in the area, we would have acquired Canada, Mexico, fucking everything in Central America if we wanted to. But notice that we didn't, and that's what I think the main difference between the US and Nazi Germany is that we're quiet about how we're bigoted. We're a bigoted country. We can acknowledge that. We're very racist when it comes to a lot of things. We still argue that, like, illegal immigrants aren't humans. They're just criminals that come over the border, like, constantly. It's disgusting the way we treat people in this country, especially with the way that we support laissez-faire capitalism and dehumanize homeless people in this country as well. Like, but we're quiet about it. We use rhetoric. We debate on it. We make it seem like it's more humane than it actually is. Whereas Nazi Germany was flat out like, balls to the wall. Oh no, these guys are degenerate. They're destroying our society. We don't do that here. We word it differently. We say they. They are taking over our banks. We say we use the triple parentheses. I think that's the best way to put it. Nazi Germany would have been like, Jewish people are taking our banks and all of our money. America would triple parentheses, they are taking all our money. That's the difference between the two. And the problem is, Germany after the war changed their ideology and are becoming more accepting, even though there's still a lot of bigoted people there. No doubt, there's bigoted people in every fucking Western country. We still continually, rhetorically phrase these incredibly dumb and racist arguments with like alienation of different human beings. We do it in a way that doesn't seem like it's as evil as it actually is.
US state racial ideology. Well, yeah, they weren't exactly the same, but part of the reason for that is because the Nazis further developed what the American founding fathers had created. Like, generally when people talk about Nazism...
By what, invading Europe? As if no other country has tried to do that?
It's the anti-Semitism part of it, which is obviously important, but Nazism...
We did have anti-Semitism in the US. I think it was like literally like incredibly popular at the time. In America, in all of Europe. It's just Nazis and Germany at the time. Germany was incredibly poor. It was like constantly paying reparations, getting spat in the face of other European countries, that they used this poor state that they were in to blame Jews and then just completely try and get rid of them, which was not a good move.
Was precipitated on primarily on the concept of Lebensraum. Like, you know, it wasn't just, okay, you know, the conspiracy theories against Jews in Germany. It was that and the Eastern expansion for living space. And in the East, you know...
You're doing a manifest destiny when you go to war over land, I guess.
Practically everyone there was considered to be less than human and only worthy of genocide. Aside from...
What, just all French? All Polanders? No, they're just trying to reclaim land they lost, and then more. Which is why they lost, because they kept going outward.
The German minorities there, of course. You know, they were seen as being, like, in the way of German settler colonial expansion. That's another thing, is that the Nazis the Nazis heavily romanticized this idea of, like, the iron yeoman farmer who would, like, you know, settle on the frontier with a rifle and kill any of the subhumans who came to stop him. That is literally the exact same as the Jeffersonian ideal of the frontier white yeoman farmer. Eugenics is not important to this conversation because it literally didn't exist. It literally didn't exist when Manifest Destiny was created. Darwin came 60 years later. It's irrelevant. I mean, I'm not talking about, like, they both did forced sterilization. Many more countries did forced sterilization that also didn't have this sort of foundation. I'm not just taking random things and saying one side did this, the other side also did this, therefore they're all the same.
Is it just me, or does this feel like a European defense piece for the colonization they did as well?
I'm like, the US did settler colonialism, the Nazis also did settler colonialism, therefore the US and the Nazis are the same. If you were to list the three heads of Manifest Destiny, that'd be like Jefferson, Jackson, Hitler, basically. There's a very clear ideological...
That, like, I love how he says that you shouldn't slump things together so broadly, and then he does it.
Chain between them. Jefferson, Jackson, Friedrich Ratzel, and Adolf Hitler, okay? That's the four heads, because Ratzel is the guy who coined the term. Ratzel had traveled to New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, Richmond, Charleston, New Orleans, and San Francisco. Wow. And then he came back to Germany and is like, man, we need to do what they did here. I'm going to make a longer video about this, but for now...
Please do.
You know, imagine that you had, like, a state like that, explicitly founded on what is basically a more successful Nazism. And then, like, 200 years later, you're like, you know, we won. Get over it. We won. Get over it. That's Vosh and all the other pro-settler colonial leftists who try to frame any sort of...
Okay.
You know, imagine that you had, like, a state like that, explicitly founded on what is basically a more successful Nazism.
Okay, I understand that nationalism is what, like, literally made imperialism so drastic for America, but you're forgetting literally every other colony that existed at the time. What I'm trying to say is that there's, like, multiple different reasons why Germany did the things it did, as well as the United States. To pretend like it was all just so they could ethnic cleanse people and do a manifest destiny is so fucking cringe, dude. You're missing, like, the entire fucking context of, like, what led up to World War II happening and why they did the genocide that they did. In Europe, Judaism was way more prominent than it was in America. And the reason why we had a rise in Judaism in our country was because of what Germany did there. Of course, we still had some anti-Semitic beliefs. That was like prone for Western civilization. But pretend like all these leftists are pro-colonization, apparently. Way to ignore the fucking issue when people on the right do this on a day-to-day basis and try to find reasons to go back in Afghanistan. You could focus your time on this, but instead you attack leftists on the internet. This is what the left does when they implicitly don't say we should just completely go back to Europe somehow for all the colonization we did. You can acknowledge that what we did was fucked and also want to live in the current system. You know that? Like, you can say it's fucked that we live in this, but I live in this. This is like, you want to benefit society, but yet you live in a society. Like, imagine the hypocrisy of the leftists. Like, feels like, is this just a popular leftist thing to do? Like, bash leftists that probably agree with you more than the opposing side and have a giant hate boner for like the small changes in opinion?
Any sort of resistance to that as ethnic cleansing, because apparently colonists is an ethnicity now. I can tell you what Eastern Europe would be like if
Wait, what was that?
tried to frame
Oh,
any sort of resistance to that as ethnic cleansing, because apparently colonists is an ethnicity now.
He's talking about he's talking about the Professor Flowers video where like Professor Smiles lady literally said ethnic cleansing wouldn't be okay with her, but she wouldn't blame people for doing it. Is this like a hate boner thing because he wants to agree with the black nationalists or what?
I can tell you what Eastern Europe would be like if the Nazis won World War II, like the USA, circa 1850. That's
If the US did what Nazi Germany did, we would have Canada, Mexico, and everything in Central America. So calm down. We bought more land than we did fight for it, okay? Germany exclusively fought for it. Quit pretending like these are equivalent. Basic analysis of this video, he's hastily generalizing, saying that America is like Nazi Germany because they wanted to expand their empire, because they thought they were ethnically pure or whatever. When there are components of that in Manifest Destiny and Lebanon's realm, however, that completely avoids the socio-political factors that were currently going on in Germany at the time. I think this is a really cringe video. Like completely ignoring the fact that Germany thought they were getting back the land that they once lost, even acquiring Austria-Hungary as a part of that, because apparently they saw themselves as equal. Expanded into countries they probably knew they weren't going to defeat, like Russia, like if the US tried to invade Canada at the time. Completely ignoring like the inner burning hatred that the Germans had for the people around them. Whereas America was just expanding their empire by taking lands from other empires. Like, not even to mention, saying that our colonialism in the American area was the worst thing to happen in the American continent, when literally the Spanish Empire happened. When literally Hernan Cortez and Francisco Pizarro destroyed Incan and Aztec civilizations, and Mayan civilizations in that regard. That's just fucking cringe when you think that's on the same level as us acquiring land from other empires. And I'm not going to ignore what we do with Native Americans was fucked. Well, what we do currently as well is pretty fucked, in that we won't give them their own land. Or we do give them some land, but we could definitely give them like a state. I feel like that would probably be best. But to then pretend like that was Vosh's argument in the Professor Smiles debate was fucking hilarious. Tells you where this dude's mind's at. And then just from this Putin thing alone, I'm hoping he's not actually like just one of those fucking Russian dudes who pretends like they're American media, but actually just gets paid from like Russians under the table. But I can't, of course, say that he is that. I don't personally know, considering that he is somewhat of a small channel in comparison to other ones, like Caleb Maupin and Chaos's Mel, but I don't know. Once I see a video of him defending the Uyghur genocide, I can tell you. So, okay. Wow. This was a pretty shit video that had some factual information. Some things were right, but he's hastily generalizing a lot in this video, making shitty comparisons and ignoring historical contexts that he isn't aware of or is openly just like ignoring.